Welcome. We're starting off with a Fig Jam icebreaker. So we're posting the link in the chat. Come join us in there. Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Ellery, do you want to share the Fig Jam screen and we can play the music while people...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let me...
Perfect. Set a timer too, so we make sure we get started.
Nice. Can you hear that?
Faintly.
Okay, let me turn it up. How's that?
I can hear them both pretty clearly.
Okay, cool.
Oh wait, when I change the volume, does it change it for everyone? Or...
I think it's just you for the volume.
I think we told people this last time we did the Figma, but if you want to turn off the cursors, there's a way to do that.
Yeah. If all of the cursors are I don't remember how. Let me see. Oh.
Top right corner and click the percentage and turn off the multiplayer cursors option. Is there a percentage?
I don't have that, but it may be because I'm a guest in the Fig Jam.
Oh yeah, I don't see it.
Whenever you join a meeting after something's been posted in the chat, you don't see the chat history. So if someone's just joining after you already posted it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. We're in Fig Jam. Yeah, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Welcome.
If you go to the Fig Jam icon on the left-hand side and click that and then view multiplayer cursors, shuts off the cursors.
I'll just leave it on. Welcome, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Casey.
Hi. Thanks for joining us tonight. Yes, awesome. So thanks everyone for coming in and, having some fun on the Fig Jam at our first event of the year for Philly Chi. We're very excited, if you're joining us for the first time or once again. And especially for tonight, we have a wonderful, to my knowledge, the first ever of its kind at Philly Chi, Intro to OOUX, that's Object Oriented UX, with Upma Singh, who is actually a Philly Chi alum, Philly Chi like board member alum, amongst many other things, who will be presenting the strong information architecture to intuitive screen design. So yeah, and throughout the meeting tonight, we'll be taking some questions for the Q&A portion afterwards. So please drop those in the chat below, and we won't get to every single one, but the ones that we get to, we try to get the ones that people are like all kind of like asking the same questions, as those things go. We'll be taking those questions in the chat. Yeah, and yeah, thanks. Thank you. Yes. So, we're gonna do our brief announcements, and then we're gonna introduce Upma as well, have the Q&A, and we'll have our wrap up and raffle winners. This is our agenda tonight. Again, 6:30 to 6:40, the announcements. 6:40 to 7:30 will be the talk with Upma about object-oriented UX. 7:30 to 7:45, Q&A for those of us just joining. And 7:45 to 8, wrap up and raffle winners. The raffle winners will be Rosenfeld books, which no, that's okay. We can, yeah. And I'll take it over to Jonathan, our lovely new board members. I feel like we should probably introduce the board members, the new board members that are joining us. Not sure that we've done that yet. Oh, that's right. That's coming. That's coming. Okay. Sorry, guys. We sneak peek here. Jonathan, yes, our treasurer, please take it away and tell us about our annual sponsors.
Thank you. Yes. So thank you all once again for being here and supporting this event. It basically helps our community, it helps us grow our vision, and you help us really connect with sponsors, which help us just collectively grow together. So if you are interested, or your company or your workplace is interested in becoming a sponsor, just email phillychi@gmail.com, or find us on our webpage, and there's a form you can fill out, or you can just directly reach out to me. So I want to give a big thanks to our sponsors, Bentley Systems, Rosenfeld Media, The Judge Group, Penn AI, Think Company, and Drexel University College of Computing and Informatics. For tonight, a big, huge thank you for Bentley Systems for sponsoring this event, and for Philly Chi's own former board member, Upma. Basically, for all this support, allowed us to have this great event for tonight, and we appreciate you all being here.
I just want to give a quick spiel about Bentley as our event sponsor for tonight. Bentley is an infrastructure engineering software company. They're a global company, and they have 2 nearby offices in Philadelphia and Exton. And if you're interested in learning more about them, they have over 100 open roles that show up on their career page when you search design, and they do have a few openings for head of user experience. So thank you so much for Bentley sponsoring tonight's event. And now for the raffle books.
Yeah, so every event we do a raffle, and I'm going to pick 3 random names. So make sure you stay until the end of the event to get a free ebook copy of these 3 Rosenfeld books. So we have Product Management for UX People by Christian Cumlish, and Duly Noted, Extend Your Mind Through Connected Notes by Jorge Arango, and then From Solo to Scaled by Natalie Marie Dunbar. The second book is a new book that just came out in January 2024. The other 2 recently came out in the past year or so. So we'll just be randomly selecting 3 names, and then at the end we'll announce who wins the raffle books, and in the next coming weeks you'll get a link to your ebook if you won.
Casey, you're muted.
Yep, got that. Yeah, so if you're joining us for the first time, just wanted to let you guys know like who we are. Philly Chi is a interdisciplinary group committed to advancing UX. Oftentimes in the field, it's also like UX as an umbrella term, or falls under the umbrella of computer-human interaction, also known as human-computer interaction in the real world, HCI. I don't know. You know, you guys get it, but that's who we are. We're Philly Chi. We're a professional discipline dedicated to strengthening the Philadelphia UX community through regular educational programming and networking opportunities. One thing to note is that we do very much so seriously support a safe and positive environment for professionals to gather, converse, and explore interests in user experience. So if you see of anything that kind of goes against that creed or hear of anything, please let us know. And we really try to keep this a very safe and mindful atmosphere for everybody. Yeah, so. Another thing, you know, who are we? This changes pretty much every year or every 2 years as the board changes out. We're a volunteer-run organization, so this is all on our free time. And this year, us is myself as board chair. I'm returning from last year's social media chair. Veen Wen is our vice chair, also returning from last year. Jesse Meltzer, that is our new secretary. So round of applause for Jesse, as well as Jonathan Nitka, who is our treasurer. Round of applause for Jonathan joining the board this year. Ellery Seether as the community coordinator, returning again from last year, and Alexandra McNally as our social media coordinator for this year, joining. And you know, this is a new position that we are starting this year, is the volunteer coordinator position, and joining us again from last year as secretary last year's Epiphany Liu. So yeah, we're really trying to extend the volunteer reach this year. So if you're interested in becoming a volunteer, you can always email us at phillychi@gmail.com. We're really expanding on what that means this year as well.
All right, then now it's job time, which is what we have job time at all of our events. This is where we ask folks who are hiring in the Philadelphia area to share details about their open roles. So in the Fig Jam board, we have a spreadsheet for any open roles you have. You can enter information in there, but I'd also like to invite anyone who is hiring to unmute themselves right now and give a little bit of info about the role. So would anyone like to share a job? Okay, no worries. If you have one, and you'd like to enter it into the Fig Jam, feel free. There's also a networking sheet in the Fig Jam. Definitely not required. Feel free to enter your information in there if you'd like to connect with other people, and make sure to save the Fig Jam link for yourself, because we will not be sharing the link again after tonight's event. So if you want to refer back to the networking sheet or the job time sheet, just make sure you save this link, which I'll drop back in the chat. Now we're moving on to our feature presentation, an intro to OOUX, from strong information architecture to intuitive screen design, with Upma Singh. Upma is a lead experience designer at Intellibridge. She loves the challenge of working through a particularly complex mess, and she encourages her teammates and clients to think holistically. Upma is a former cat mom who loves cooking, watching TV, listening to podcasts, and knitting. And like we said earlier on, we're going to be doing a Q&A with her at the end. So if you have any questions for her during the talk, just feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get to those at the end. So now I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over to Upma.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And also, congratulations to all of you who are on the board. Yeah. Okay. You're seeing my slide?
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So yes, again, thank you so much for that introduction. That was very lovely. I appreciate it. I'm so happy to be presenting at Philly Chi, one of my true UX loves. I was on the board maybe about 10 years ago. It's an organization I love and it's very close to my heart. Before I begin, I do want to, actually, I want to get my screen right here. I've got something in the way here. Okay, that's better. Okay, so sorry about that. Thank you. So before I begin, I do want to do a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that I'm currently standing on the traditional territory of the Lenni Lenape people. I also want to acknowledge that recently, some folks in some indigenous communities have expressed their disdain of land acknowledgements because they just seem like empty words. So I don't want to be like that. I want to be a good ally. And so I am committing, and I hope that you will think about this commitment too, to make a concerted effort to include Indigenous people in my design research and collaboration activities. So today's talk is a very high level introduction to OOUX, object-oriented user experience design. So I'm going to go over what OOUX is and how we use it to create a map of your product, and then how that map translates into a screen design that you shouldn't have to rework over and over again, because you've done the bulk of the heavy thinking in sticky notes and spreadsheets. I will throw out there, if at the end of this talk, if you feel like you want more, and you might want to attend a workshop where we go step by step together and you get to practice this a little bit, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me a note and let me know. If you don't want a workshop, that's fine. If you just want to connect on LinkedIn, that's fine too. But do send me a note either way, so I know who you are. Okay, so what is OOUX? Really, very simply, it's a way of thinking. It's an idea. It's a concept. It's a design philosophy that respects the fact that people think in objects. So what does that mean when I say people think in objects? There's a really wonderful article that was written over 10 years ago by Yankee. I have it listed on my resources slide for you, and I think that you'll be sent that at the later tonight at the end of this presentation. The premise of this article is that we should move away from task-focused design and move toward object-focused design. And the example that she gives us is what this illustration is showing. And by the way, I want to throw credit to Karen Toledano and Neha Agarwal for this illustration. They are two local women. I don't know if there's, well, I know Karen's not there anymore. I don't know if Neha is, but they both used to be at Think Company at one point. Karen is also an OOUXer, and they came up with this illustration to illustrate this example that Yankee talks about, which is basically when you wake up in the morning and you think of all the things that you have to do, you're not thinking, oh, these are all the things I need to wash. These are all the things or people I need to feed. But more likely you're thinking of, oh, the baby, I need to feed the baby. I need to wash the baby, or the dog, I need to brush the dog. I need to feed the dog. So more likely you're thinking in a nouns first way, and you're attaching that action or verb to the noun. And so Yankee has a lot of support in this idea. There are studies by both linguists and psychologists. They come to the same conclusion that most humans around the globe think in a nouns first way. This is true even if a community's native language is more verb oriented. They still find that the children in those communities are still learning and thinking in a nouns first way. And so because we think in a nouns first way, we understand the world around us better when we have consistent, recognizable objects in our environment or our product. So for me, kind of the meta mental model here is, well, if humans think in nouns, maybe we should design our digital spaces to match that mental model. So now the question is, well, how do we do that? And that is where ORCA comes into play. So ORCA stands for Objects, Relationships, CTAs, and Attributes. It is the actual methodology or process that Sophia Prater, the chief evangelist of OOUX, she created this. And what it does is it helps translate research and requirements into clarified design structure. We do require blue, yellow, pink, and green sticky notes. And this is really just so that if somebody comes across your object map or you come across somebody else's object map, you'll be able to read it properly. And I always throw this out to, no one has told me that they have an accessibility problem with these, with this color coding, but just in case, I just want to say the workaround would be to label your notes with either ORCA or label your notes with blue, yellow, pink, or green. Okay, so let me go back and repeat what ORCA is. It's a tool that helps translate research and requirements into clarified design structure. So we take a step back for a second and we ask ourselves, hey, what is the definition of information architecture? That's a really good question. And you might have investigated this before, or you might not. If you do, you will see there are a lot of definitions out there. They all basically say the same thing, except some of them are like 4 paragraphs long and some of them are a lot more succinct. When I was kind of coming up with my own, like, let's make this a little bit more succinct definition, I actually came across somebody else who was basically saying the same thing I wanted to say. So I'm just going to use his words. There's an information architect out there called Dan Brown. He is the co-founder of a design firm called 8 Shapes. And he says that information architecture is the underlying structure of a product that frames the user experience. So we need this structure so that it's really essential for usability and sustainability. And so when we work in an OOUX-y way, when we use the ORCA method, you end up with exactly that. You end up with a way to understand and map the underlying structure of your product so that it lives a longer and stronger life. And it provides your users with more intuitive and easier to use interfaces. So I want to talk about how to go through the ORCA process. But before that, I want to talk about what are the parts of ORCA? What does this mean? So for the O, we're looking at the objects. What are the objects in the user's mental model or the business model? Essentially, what are the things in our system? What are people coming here for? And we have relationships. So what are the objects' relationships to each other? Understanding these relationships is it's a really good first step and a really strong first step into making that structure, getting that structure started. It's also going to be basically how we figure out what the contextual navigation through our system is going to be. Then we have C, calls to action. So our CTAs are really the entry points to our task flows. And I just want to make an aside here. So when we're talking about OOUX and we're working through ORCA, we're really firmly in that information architecture space. We're not really talking about interaction design. We're not talking about task flows. So the CTAs here really are just like, what are the things that people need to do to our objects? And then these are the entry points to those interactions. I also want to say that when we're thinking in an OOUX-y way, we are absolutely not downgrading verbs. We're not downgrading tasks. We're building the internet. These things are, we can't do it without them. We're not downgrading these things at all. We are just elevating the nouns, really just so we can build a system that makes sense. And then we can attach our verbs or actions to those nouns. The object is directly manipulable. And then finally, we've got attributes, and all that is the extra little bits and pieces of information that make up that object. So that's ORCA, objects, relationships, calls to action, and attributes. All right, so now let's talk more about objects. Take a break here for a second. All right, so what is an object? Again, an object is a thing. And specifically, it's a thing that has value to the user or the business. When we start to think about what are the objects in our system, we also want to think about what are the specific instances of that object. So what that means is the object in our system is going to be like a cookie cutter. You can think of it as a template or a stencil. And then that cookie cutter is going to make specific things, specific instances. So, for example, if we have a product like IMDb, an object in that system, the cookie cutter, is going to be movie. And then specific movies, specific instances of movies are going to be Barbie, Black Panther. I have Jojo Rabbit listed here. So another example would be another object in IMDb could be probably actor. And then specific instances of actor are going to be like Margot Robbie, Chadwick Boseman, Taika Waititi, ScarJo. So this is how we start to think about our objects. But we also, at the same time, we want to think about what are instances of that object. And then does this make sense for what we're building? how we sort of go explore and find the objects that we want in our system. We do an activity that we call noun foraging. So I'm going to walk through 2 examples through the rest of this talk. So the first one's going to be that IMDb example, and then the second one is going to be this. We're going to pretend that our friend is just opened an independent pharmacy in the neighborhood and they want an app for their customers. So our friend is like, hey, please, you got to make me this app. I've done so much user research. Here you go. So he gives us a lot of user transcripts. So we're going to start there. We're also going to take our transcripts from our conversations with our stakeholder friend who owns the pharmacy. We're also going to look at a bunch of desk research that we've done. We're going to take all of this information. We're going to go through it and highlight all the nouns in blue. So blue is for objects. That's our first color code. And I will say, like, as you do this activity more and more, you will also want to, go ahead and highlight also the verbs. You might want to also highlight the adjectives. That's great. You should do that. But when you're first getting started, I do advise to just stick with the nouns. Like, your head is already going to hurt through going through this process. So like, just take baby steps and get through it. And then once you know it better, you can do more. So noun foraging is how we sort of explore the first step and how we explore what might objects in our system be. And what we're going to do when we get all those blue highlights, we're going to throw all that on our whiteboard. And then we're going to start to consolidate. So we're going to throw out the ones that maybe are just out of scope or not in our domain. And we're going to think about, like, what are synonyms. Some of these might actually be instances of an object instead of an object. So consolidate those that way. And then we're going to come up with, well, this is what I want to start with for my MVP or my phase 1 of this product. And so for our pharmacy app, we have decided that we're going to start with patient, prescription, and condition. These are the most important things that we need to get this thing on the road. So that is how we start thinking about objects. Now we're going to move on to relationships. So we ask ourselves, how does each thing in our system connect to other things? How do these objects relate to each other? So for IMDb, we could say that a movie has 1 to many actors, and an actor maybe has 0 to many movies. Maybe they only do TV and they are not in movies. So they're elsewhere in the system under TV shows, but they have 0 to many movies. So we do this sort of arrow directional thing, but how we sort of scale it up is we use this matrix. And so if you end up with a product with like 20 objects, this is much easier to read than some sort of model that has a bunch of arrows pointing everywhere. So this is the way to go. We call this our nested object matrix. And basically what it is at the top, we have our objects. And we call these our host objects. They are our objects that are the system. And then on the y-axis, we list those objects again, but this time we think of them as our nested objects. So what's happening here is this is actually going to be the beginning of your object map, which is the artifact that we end up with. And how you read an object map is you've got your objects at the top. You at some point will prioritize them from left to right. And then underneath your object, you have all of the attributes for that object. And so these nested objects are the first attributes that we're going to think about. And so we're going to go cell by cell, and we're going to say, what might a relationship be between patient and prescription? So a prescription has 1 patient. That is a relationship. There might be more than one relationship. note all of them down that you want to. So essentially what you're doing when you're thinking about this as an object, and then these are the attributes, you're essentially saying, how does this nested object sit in the context of our host object? And then, yeah, so this is our nested object matrix. It's a really powerful little sub artifact of our object map. And then we're going to move on to calls to action. So everything users do, they do to something. Like I said earlier, we want to design our objects to be directly manipulable. I'm going to steal a line from another information architect that I admire. One of the raffle giveaway books is his, Jorge Arango. In a previous book, he said something like, we want to design our digital spaces to feel as much as possible like our physical places. So again, it goes back to that idea that I was saying before, that sort of meta mental model. If humans think in nouns and humans are comfortable with a physical world of objects, why don't we design our digital space to be that comfortable as well? So yeah, that's what I want to say about that. And then what we do is we have another matrix. This is called our CTA matrix. And again, we have our objects listed up at the top. And this time on the y-axis, we have what user types might come to use the system. So these are not personas. These are actually like what type of user is going to use the system. They could be roles. But here we have patient, we have pharmacist. I probably could have added a third one that would be something like a sysadmin or a customer service rep. And those are the different types of users that are going to be using this product. And what we do, again, we go cell by cell and we say, so as a patient, what can I do to a prescription? So I might want to request a refill. I might want to ask a question. If I'm a pharmacist, I might want to dispense a prescription. And I don't know if you heard it, but this can start to generate a list of user stories. So again, as a patient, I want to request a refill on a prescription. And like I said, like I'm giving you just a really high level overview of how you can use ORCA and how you begin to use ORCA. When we go deeper into the CTA matrix and we blow it out a little bit more, we get really strong user stories, like really, really good and useful user stories. So this is just the beginning of that process. And then finally, we get to the A for attributes. So I think I said this earlier. So the nested object is already one type of attribute that we deal with. We have basically three types of attributes. We have core content, which we do in yellow. We have metadata, which we do in pink. And the difference here is core content is basically something that a human might upload or write, and it's usually going to be instance specific. And then the metadata is something that's going to be sortable or filterable, and it's usually instance agnostic. So if we look at movie, our instance of a movie is going to be Jojo Rabbit. We're going to have a nested object of actor in this, because we have an object of actor, so we're just going to pull that in here. We've got a movie description, which is core content. It's going to be specific to Jojo Rabbit, instance specific. And then we're going to have a movie runtime, which many movies could have the exact same runtime. It's instance agnostic, but it is something that you could maybe sort or filter by. And so when you've done this for all of your objects, you're going to end up with something that looks like this, which is what we call an object map. You've got all your objects. Again, at some point, you're probably going to prioritize these from left to right. And then all of your objects have all their attributes listed. At some point, you're going to prioritize these from top to bottom. And this is a map that gives you clarified design structure, AKA an information architecture for your product. So hopefully you can see that we have come to a point where we understand what the objects are in our system, what are the parts of the system and the things that have value to the user or the business. We understand what the relationships are between these things. We understand what actions we need to take on these things. I haven't put the green sticky notes on this object map. You can. We usually just handle that separately in the CTA matrix. And then you also understand what are all of the other little bits and pieces of information that make up that object. What are all of the attributes that you need for that object? So again, a clear underlying structure of our product. All right, so I said that we can go from information architecture, strong information architecture, and I'll say the reason I like to say strong is because, like I said, again, this is just a really high level overview. And if all you ever do with ORCA is as much as I'm telling you, you're doing great. This is amazing. You should totally do it. If you want to go deeper, basically the next steps are we're metaphorically flipping over that sticky note, every single one of those sticky notes, and delving deeper and getting more granular into the rules and logic of the system. So we can really blow this thing out and get really clear, really granular, and really specific about how our system works. But we're not going to go into that today. What we are going to go into is we're going to have, this is essentially a sticky note wireframe for our product, but I'm going to show you how we can take this and start to do a little screen design. So this, I know you probably can't read it. This is our prescription object from our pharmacy example. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to prioritize our attributes. And so boom. So how we're deciding what attribute has higher priority. By the way, all of these steps should be as cross-functional as you can make them. You want to work with your devs, you want to work with your stakeholders, you want to work with your users, whoever you can involve. This is really more of like designer as facilitator and getting the right decisions. You don't have to be, and probably shouldn't be, the decider on a lot of these things. So work cross-functionally, and definitely when we're doing prioritization of attributes, that is absolutely a cross-functional thing that you want to do. And it's, you know, the first attribute is going to be, what is the most important thing a user needs to know about this object? And then from top to bottom, we're going to prioritize it like that. All right, so then we're going to draw a line and we're going to say, okay, so for now, I don't really care. Like all this stuff below the line is for much later, like phase 4 or 5. But right now I just need to know what's above the line so I can get to MVP. So we're gonna do that. And now we can start to make some sketches. If we quickly think about the anatomy of most products or websites out there, we have sort of like bits of information about things like cards. We have lists, and we have details pages. So we're going to sketch object by object, and we're going to start with what do our cards look like? And we're going to start with a mobile first mentality. We're going to start with what is the smallest card we might want to show on mobile. So at minimum, I would do these 3. So the smallest card you want to show on mobile, maybe a larger card that you want to show on mobile, maybe a card that you would also maybe show on desktop, And then what might like a table row look like? So for our mini card, we're taking the first 2 or 3 attributes, and we're going to say, okay, so this is what a mini card about a prescription is going to look like this. And then we're going to draw a larger card, and you'll see our attributes from our smaller card to our larger card, they don't move. We want to design our objects to be recognizable across the system. So wherever you are in the system, if you're on a bigger screen, you're on a small screen, you're on the prescription page, you're on the conditions page, that object should be recognizable. And then if we draw our table row card, again, so like this is a much different shape, but our attributes are basically in the same priority order. So it's still pretty recognizable. And then if we want to show what the whole list might look like, could look like that. And then I want to go a step further. If we get to phase whatever, and we want to bring in the rest of the details page, rest of the attributes for a full details page. So I'm bringing over our grid card just for reference, and we're going to start our details page with essentially the same design. And then we're going to add the rest of those attributes in the priority order that we want to have them. These nested objects, I'm just kind of black boxing here because, for example, conditions, we're designing object by object. So when we design condition, we're going to have sort of the same concept, the same kind of card. We're just going to bring that over here. So maybe we'll have 3 cards to show the top other conditions that this medication treats. And that is basically how we do that. And then you can do these sort of lo-fi wireframes from here. You can talk, hopefully your visual designer has been collaborating with you all along. You can pass these along to your visual designer, and they're going to do magical things with this. And they're not going to have to rework it over and over and over. There might be some things, but like I said, you've done the bulk of the thinking now in sticky notes and spreadsheets. So you're just going to have a lot less rework to do in screen design here. I do want to direct you, I don't have a slide for this, but I do want to direct you, a good real life example of this is over at BBC Food. So if you do go there, you will experience really good contextual navigation. So if you click on something specific, they'll have links to relevant things. Like if you click on a chef, you'll see all of their recipes. If you click on one of their recipes, like maybe an eggplant curry, you'll get that eggplant curry recipe, but then you're like, oh, I don't really like this one. There's going to be a link to all eggplant recipes. You can click on all eggplant recipes and find one that you do like. So the contextual navigation there is done really well. They're really thought about their relationships. And if I remember correctly, their objects are also really pretty consistent and recognizable. The chef looks like a chef across the whole system. An ingredient looks like an ingredient. A recipe looks like a recipe. They're taking a lot of information and they're making it really easy for you to find what you want to find and for you to explore how you want to explore. So that is really all I have for you. I have a resources slide here. I don't know why I titled it references weird, but you should be getting this deck at some point. And the Everell Yankee article is right here. And then if you are interested in, so 2 things. One, if you're interested in learning more from Sophia, there is a Udemy course that she put out with Joe Natoli. You often can find it for $12. I would definitely suggest that's a great resource. I highly recommend it. But also, again, if you want something more local, maybe something in person as the weather warms up and virus numbers go down, and you want see you want a workshop with me, let me know through LinkedIn, and we'll see what the numbers look like and if that makes sense to do. So you can reach out to me at either of these places. And again, if you do want to connect on LinkedIn, please send me a note.
Thank you so much, Upma. That was wonderful. I feel like I learned so much. I personally recently just took a information architecture course through NNG. So Dan Brown also mentioned. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's just like the world never ends with these topics and these like strategies moving forward. So now we'd like to open it up for the Q&A session. And, you know, I really want to encourage everybody to ask any questions that they might have about OOUX or ORCA, or, you know, any topics that we've covered here tonight. We did get a few already. So I'm just going to ask, like, the first one is from Ellery. Do you have any recommendations for how to narrow down objects for an MVP? She's saying that she's used the ORCA process in the past, and after adding all of her stickies, everything is so connected, so everything feels important.
Yeah, that is where prioritization really comes into play. So I think the first step in consolidating is, first of all, like, what matters to us right now, put everything else aside. And then the second thing is, again, like, what are like, are these two things basically the same, or is this actually an instance of this other thing? So kind of getting that consolidation down. And then the last step, or the next step, is if you still have like a lot of objects that you're considering, what I would do is I would just go ahead, if you're really stuck, I would go ahead and just take 3 to 5 of them and just start doing a nested object matrix with just those 3 to 5. And then do another nested object matrix with another 3 to 5. There could be overlap in there. And also talk to your stakeholders about what they think is the most important and why. And just really get that prioritization down. That going ahead to the nested object matrix might help give you some clarity on, oh, this one seems actually really important. We shouldn't ship without this.
Ellery, does that answer your question?
Yes, and that's really helpful. And I actually was just thinking, like, I wonder if considering the calls to action like, if you're having trouble with that, would be helpful, because like you said, when you have the calls to action, you kind of start to see the user stories. So maybe like seeing what, if something doesn't have a call to action, is it really that important right now?
So absolutely. And the other thing I'll say is, so, you know, when we teach the process of OOUX and ORCA, like, it has to be taught in a linear fashion because everything kind of builds on everything else. But when you're actually in the real world and you're actually working this way, there's no linear. There's like, you're doing whatever step you need to do in that moment. And you could go through all of these 4 steps, and then you could say, okay, actually, I need to go back because now I know more about my CTAs. I know more about my objects. And I want to just focus on these things. So absolutely, like, yeah, the way that it's taught and the way that you actually work are different.
Yeah, so our next question comes from Epiphany, and her question is, what are your experience in sharing this with product teams and stakeholders who aren't familiar with this, specifically with the intent to get them on the board for opportunities for small implements on product that's already established?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, classic UX answer, it depends. And I think what it depends on is really your situation. So for me, I'm often on kind of bigger teams working on enterprise level software types of things. And people really don't like it when you burst through the door and you're like, I have this shiny new thing. We're going to work in this way. It's going to be awesome. We're all going to do this. I don't recommend that. If you're at a small startup, that might work. You can kind of really quickly go over this high level and say, do you want to just take a chance and just go through this and see how it works? That might work. But at anything larger than a small startup, I would say what I have found to be most successful is I just do the work. I don't say that I'm doing OOUX. I just, I might say to a client like, hey, we need to figure out what the parts of the system are before we go further. Or hey, like I'm trying to figure out whatever, and I need to know what the relationship between these two things are. These are some things that I came up with. Do you agree with this? Do you not agree with this? And just kind of like have like a lot of questions as you go through the work. This is really like a big, you will come up with a lot of questions. And so just like use those, bring those to your meetings, ask those questions. They're going to be really smart questions and everyone's going to be really impressed. And then eventually you can say, well, I'm just working in this way. And when you finally get that object map, depending on how people are feeling about the work, you could sort of unveil it at that moment, or you could just kind of still keep it a secret and just keep just doing the work. So that's my answer to that. But also, as people have become familiar with this OOUX process, as more and more people are becoming certified, I just got recertified. I've been certified since 2020. I was part of cohort 9 in my recertification just this past December. So as more and more people are going through the program, and more businesses are becoming aware of this way of working, it's possible that some of your clients might already be familiar with it. And in that case, I would be like, yeah, so we're gonna do OOUX, already familiar with it. Let's go.
And honestly, kind of like adding to that, another question is that Jesse had is, have there been any objects that have been really difficult to apply to this process to in your experience?
Can Jesse come off mute and elaborate?
Yes. I know I said yes.
I can. No, she's right. I guess I'm just trying to understand this whole process. I do plan to contact you and see if you can walk me through it. But I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, what are the limitations of this process? Are there really any, like what would give someone pause to really have to work through? And have you experienced anything that was really tough to, like, something to define a process and all of its uses? And
yeah. So for me personally, no, I've not come across anything like that. I think that maybe it's possible people are a little hesitant. That some people that have gone through the certification, and I don't know if they're saying this just to appease other people or if this is true actual experience, I think it's the former. Like they'll say, oh, OOUX isn't for everybody. And I think that's just like, there just seems to be a hesitancy to say, to just like talk and work in OOUX ways. I don't know why that is. For me, the whole reason I came to this, I actually read the first article Sophia published back in, I think it was 2015. I was still a newbie at that time. So like, I read the article and I was like, I know that this is what I want, but I don't know enough to like really understand what she's doing or what she's saying. She also was at the very beginning of the civil. ORCA didn't exist yet when she wrote that article. So this is still an evolving, growing process. And so for me, I just always knew, like, I know I could be doing better quality work. I know that the products I'm working on, I'm designing something that is absolutely going to break in 6 months or less. And that just bothers me a lot. I don't want to do that kind of work. And so I knew that infusing more information architecture and thinking in an OOUX-y way is what will help get past that. This thing's going to break in 6 months. So for me, a few of us in the OOUX community say, yeah, we've drank the Kool-Aid, we drink it all the way. We love this, we are behind this, it works, it's magic. And I do truly feel like that. I feel like as I work this process more and more on more and more projects, like one of the best ones, like I really just felt like I had superpowers, and I feel like I was coming to the table with really smart questions almost every meeting. And it's just because I was doing the work. It's just because it's hard. It's really hard, but it's really worth it to get that solid foundation for your product. Yeah, so I don't know if that really fully answers your question, but yeah, my husband says that I sound like I'm in a cult. And so I think the Kool-Aid thing is apropos.
Something could be said also about people in UX sounding like they're in a cult. Just
Yeah,
anytime I talk about Philly Kai to people, it sounds
true.
So last question from Ellen. How does this approach work given the importance of personalization?
Oh, that is a great question. So that is if you really want to get deep into the ORCA methodology. When we talk about our CTA matrix, so the CTA matrix is a first step in sort of unfolding your permissions problem, but also personalization. And so that is like, we do not have time to cover that today, but it is when you go further into the ORCA process, we do start to this is, again, like I said, like this process is still evolving. So the part where we talk about permissions and personalization hasn't been fully defined yet, but we know that the mystery starts to get unlocked in that CTA matrix, and people are working on trying to define that more and more, better and better. And like, as far as we've gotten right now, it does unlock a lot for both permissions and personalization. Yeah, personalization, I think. And so yeah, I would just say if you want to go that deep, I would direct you to the self-paced masterclass, which it's a pretty penny, but again, I think it's really worth it. So there's 2 courses that Sophia offers. There's a self-paced masterclass, which costs half as much as a certification. They're both the same material. Self-paced is just you doing it by yourself. And then the certification is you're in an actual cohort moving along with everybody else at the same time. You're talking to each other, you have resources, you have access to Sophia, you have access to mentors. So that's the difference. But I would say, I don't think there's going to be another certification cohort until this summer. So if you are thinking that's the way you want to go, I would go ahead and sign up for the self-paced masterclass, because you will get second dibs on the cohort when it opens up. And also then you'll have access to all of the material, and you can, go at it at your own pace as well. And then you can also reach out to me. I may or may not be able to help you depending on what else is going on in my life. But don't hesitate to reach out, and I will do my best to guide you.
Okay, so I actually had a question. So I know that we've, like, everything has been super informative, echoing what a few sentiments in the chat have been saying. So my question is, maybe with, like, in terms of, information architecture and some of these other, like, UX problem solving type practices that we know, what's like a good, besides going through the training, like what are some like key things that we should really know before trying to apply ORCA?
Okay, that's a good question. So I'm kind of understanding the question as, if you don't know anything about information architecture, you're total newbie, how can I learn? So I have two people / resources that I would recommend. And the first one is Abby Covert. She has written a book 10 years ago now, called How to Make Sense of Any Mess. It is actually all online too, so you could just find it online if you don't want to buy the book, but you should buy it if you can. Thank you. And that is going to be a really great fundamentals kind of resource for you to get your feet wet into what even is IA. And then the second one, I would say, after you take a look at that, I would, give me 1 second. I need to find it. Here it is. Okay. I couldn't remember the title. It's a book apart book. It's called Everyday Information Architecture. It's written by Lisa Maria Martin, who actually, I think after she wrote this book, became an employee of A Book Apart. I think she's like an editor or something. So yeah, so kind of a local business also. So definitely this book is really great also to kind of like as a good introduction to information architecture. But I would say, really, if you do the Udemy course, or if like everything I said today really resonated with you, I mean, do those things also, because they're important and informative. But if you just want to dive in, you can just dive in. I don't think you need that. You should do that for supporting information.
No, I mean, it's awesome to hear that, because I think like sometimes there are some like, well, you should probably have this like background info first, and it's good to hear that. I definitely have to check those books out too, but I've heard those before as well, but I'm sure others in the chat maybe have as well. So they're classics in the IA world. So actually, I'm going to pass it to Ellery for our last question, and then we'll start talking about the raffle winners.
Thank you. Yeah, my last question is just kind of a fun one. Just wondering whether you are planning on doing any more OOUX meetups this year, since I know there was at least one last year.
There was, we did. So yes, last year I did help organize the OOUX happy hour events. And so as a part of that, I decided to do an in-person event in Philadelphia. We had a great time. Ellery was there. And so, yeah, I think that was pretty fun. And I think maybe later this spring or summer or fall, I don't know, depending on how time acts. I think having another one would be really great. So yeah, definitely.
Sweet. All right, let me reshare our slides. Well, actually, first, thank you so much, Upma. That was awesome. And every time I use the ORCA process at work, and I found it to be really valuable. And every time I hear you talk about it, I'm like, oh, I really need to learn more about it because I know what I'm doing is just like the tip of the iceberg. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to these bad boys. Time for our raffle winners, which will be announced by Epiphany.
Yeah, so for the first one, and while I'm reading these names, if you won the raffle, could you private message me your email as I'm speaking? That would be great. So Raisha Altaf is the winner of product management for UX people.
I think I saw Raisha had to leave early, but
Oh, okay.
I'm sure we have her contact info if it's the same Raisha that was on the board 2 years ago.
Oh, Raisha. Okay, gotcha. Mispronounced her name. All right. And the next one is Azalea Calderon.
That would be me. So how do I actually send, thank you, cheers. Whoop. How do I actually send you the email? I'm sorry. I can definitely drop my email here. I don't care if it's public.
You can change the two to just me or just send it public, whatever you're comfortable with.
I can't see exactly who's speaking. So sorry, who is it going to be?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Epiphany.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, 3 is Malachi from Solo to Scaled. Is Malachi still on the call?
Yeah, I'm still here. Nice.
Nice.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll
so
send you a private message then.
all right, thanks. All right, congrats to everybody on your books. You'll get them in the next week or two over email.
Woo.
Yay. So thank you all. Thanks everybody for coming, virtual, if you're here in Philly or if you're not, like we welcome everybody. So stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected. We are, hoping to have more information about our next event in February. You can follow us on our LinkedIn page, Philly Chi. You can subscribe to our emailing list. It's you can find that information on phillychi.com. Excuse me, it's not phillychi.com. I'm not sure why I said that. phillychi.org. So, you can always find information there. And we do have an Instagram as well. Shout out to that. Thanks again. And thank you so much, Upma. Like, you were fantastic. I learned so much. I am speaking for everybody. We all learned so much. So, yes.
Thank you.